Alrighty, so here is our first question. We have 492 divided by 6. All right, so here we go. Now remember, with long division, it really helps when we know our multiplication tables. But if there is a situation where you're like, Coach John, I'm not strong with my multiplication, and so that's hence why I struggle with long division, don't worry. I'll show you just a real quick little trick that can help you set you up for success when you are doing long division. If you don't feel necessarily comfortable with your multiplication or understanding how many times a number can go in. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out, we don't want to figure out how many times 6 can go into that whole number, 492, because that would just be crazy. It's just too big. So the first thing we're going to do is just to see, can 6 go into the first number? Okay, so I'm going to look right here. My first number is a 4. So I'm seeing, can 6 go into 4? Okay, and the answer is no. The reason why it can't is because 4 is not big enough. Okay, so a number like that 6, it can never go into a number that it's smaller than. Okay, so that 4 is smaller than the 6. It's just too small. So what we're going to do is now we're going to look at the second number. And so now we're going to see the number is 49. Instead of saying 6 going into 4, we're going to see, can 6 go into 49? And actually it can, because any number that is bigger than the number there on the outside, that means it at least can go into it. Now, it doesn't mean it can go into it evenly. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to figure out how close can we get to that number 49? Okay. Now, like I said, if right off the hand, if you don't feel you're strong with your multiplication skills and you don't look at that and say, I know exactly what that answer is. I know that 6 can go into 49 this many times. If you don't know that off the top of your head, what I like to do is I like to come across. Now, that 49 is a big number. Okay. And if some of our kiddos, you don't feel confident in your multiplication or your times tables, most of us feel very confident with our 5s and our 2s. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a 5. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, what would 6 times 5 be? And it's important that we write it down on the side. Just over here to the side, just write this out. Okay. So I'm going to figure out what 6 times 5 is. Okay. So we go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So that means that 6 times 5 is 30. Okay. Now remember, we're trying to get as close to 49 as we can. So when I see that 6 times 5 is 30, I think we can get a lot closer. Okay. So 6 times 5 was 30. So we're going to go to the next times table, which would be 6 times 6. Okay. And if you say, I don't know what 6 times 6 is, all it is from this point is we're just simply adding the number 6 to that previous answer. So if 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 6 is just going to be 6 more than that. So if I say 30 plus 6, that would be 36. Okay. So I'm going to look 36. I'm trying to get to 49. Still a little bit of a ways away. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to go to the next times table, which would be 6 times 7. Okay. So I'm going to figure out what 6 times 7. Again, remember, all this is, all multiplication is repeated addition. So all I'm going to do is just add 6 to that 36. So 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. Okay, so 6 times 7 is 42. Okay, so we're getting closer. We're in the 40s. So I want to see if I can get even closer. So I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to say 6 times 8. Okay, and again, all we're doing is we're just adding 6. So my previous answer was 42. So I'm just going to add 6 to that. 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. Now that is really close. I'm within 1 digit. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say that is as close as I can get. I can't get, because if I do 6 times 9, here's what would happen. If I tried to say that 6 can go into 49 9 times, here's what's going to happen. I would just, again, add 6 to my previous answer. So my previous answer was 48. So I'm going to add 6 to it. 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. So 6 times 9 is 54. And you see how that 54 is just too big. So 54 is too big. So the closest that I can get without going over was 6 times 8 is 48. So what I'm going to say is that 6 can go into 49 8 times. So I'm going to put that right up here, right above that 9. I'm going to stick the 8. Okay. And I put that 8 right here above the 9 because it was under 49. So I'll put it there. And then if you need to remind yourself, sometimes I put a little X here just to remind myself that after I say 6 goes into 49 8 times, I got to multiply these two numbers. And 6 times 8, because we have it written right here, is 48. So I'm going to write that right here. Okay. So then what we do with these two numbers, the next step is we subtract. Okay. So I got 49. I'm going to subtract the 48 because we said that 6 goes to 49 8 times, which is 48. When we subtract, 9 minus 8 is 1, and 4 minus 4 is 0. Okay, you can decide, you can write the 0 if you want. I'm not going to, but you could put a 0 there. So after we do that, so I said 9 minus 8 is 1. My next step is there's a number sitting here, this little 2's. Hey, am I going to get in the mix? And wait, well, what am I going to do? I want to be a part of this problem. So now it's the 2's turn to get in the action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that 2 down. I'm going to put it right here. And so what I did was that 1, I brought the 2 down, combined it together. So now we got a 12. Okay. So now I'm going to sit there and say, how many times can 6 go into 12? Now, remember these numbers, these multiplication tables we put to the side? Never erase those. Even when you're done with the problem, always keep them here. Because sometimes what will happen is maybe even on another problem, say this was number 1, maybe you're working on homework or working on classwork, and on number 5, there's another number where you're dividing by 6, and it helps if you already have all of this worked out that, oh man, look, I know that 6 times 7 is 42 already. So never erase that. When you work all those multiplication tables on the side, always keep it there because you may be able to refer back to that later in the same problem or even an additional problem. So whatever you work out there, never erase it. Keep it there. Okay. But our problem is right now, everything that we worked out, 6 times 5, 6 times 6, all of that stuff, those answers are too big. We're trying to just get to little old 12. So if you ever do 6 times 5 and that answer was too big, the next thing I go to is a 2. And the reason why I like, hey, let's just try 6 times 2, because again, the sets of times tables most students are the strongest is working with their 2s or their 5s, okay? And their 10s, 2s, 5s, and 10s. Most students are very good multiplying those. So here we go. So we're going to say, what is 6 times 2? 6 times 2 is 12. That's just 6 and 6, right? Okay. And that right there was perfect because we just wanted to get a kind of a reference point. We said 6 times 2 is 12, and that turns out that's exactly what it is. So 6 times 2 is 12. So I'm going to say that 6 goes into 12 2 times. I write the answer up here. That little number right there is going to go at the top. And then we take these answers. 2 times 6 is 12. Okay. And then this step, once we do all that work, is to subtract. And in this case, 12 minus 12 is 0. That was great. There's nothing to do there. I look at the back of the number. Is there any other numbers to bring down? There is not. And so that officially means it is done. It is absolutely over. There's no remainder. That means that 6 went into 492 perfectly even. And this is your answer, 82. 6 went to 492 82 times. And so right then and there, you got it. You got your answer. All right. So our second problem, we have 5,826 divided by 7. Now, a lot of kiddos, they'll look and they'll see the thousands and they just, oh my gosh, the number's too big. And they start getting intimidated. And it's, I can't do this problem. Well, we're not doing that, mathletes. You're not going to get intimidated. We'll just do it one little piece at a time and we'll get you through it. Okay. All right. So here we got 7 and we're going to see if it can go into the first digit. The first digit was a 5. And remember, 5's too small. 5's smaller than that 7. That means 7 can't go into the 5, can't fit. Okay. So we're going to add the 8 there. Okay. So we're going to say, can 7 go into 58? All right. Now, I don't know if it goes into it evenly yet, but since 58 is bigger than 7, then we know 7 can at least go into 58. We're just going to see how close we can get into it. Okay. Now, remember, 58 is a large number. So just like we said before, hey, we're going to start with our 5s because, again, 5s are a very kind and nice set of multiples to learn. Okay. So we got 7 times 5. We're going to figure out what that is. So we're going to just count it out. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I'm going to stop at 7 because we're going into it 7 times. So 7 times 5 is 35. All right. So here we go. So now we're seeing 35. Remember, we're trying to get to 58. So 35 is really not that close. So we're going to try to keep going. Okay. 7 times 6. Now remember, mathletes, we talked about that when you write your numbers on previous problems, sometimes you can refer back to it and it can help you out. And if we look back here at the problem we worked out before, we know that 6 times 7 or 7 times 6 means the same thing, is 42. We have it right there. So we didn't even need to work this out because on our first problem, we kept that information there. We didn't erase it. And we know that, hey, we already know that answer. It's 42. Okay, so that was nice. All right. However, 42 is still quite a bit of ways from 58. So we're going to keep going. All right. So we're going to do is 7 times 7 next. Okay. See if that gets us closer. Now remember, you see how we're just multiplying everything by sevens? That means we're adding 7 to our previous answer. So our previous answer was 42. So 7 times 6 is 42. If I want to figure out what 7 times 7 would be, is I would just add 7 to that previous answer. So I got 42, so I'm just going to add 7, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. So 7 times 7 is 49. Now I'm getting closer, but I'm looking here, 58, 49. I think we can get even closer. So I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to go to my next one, 7 times 8. And again, all I'm going to do is just add 7 to the previous answer, which was 49. So I'm going to go 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. So 7 times 8 is 56. Okay. Now I think that's about as close as you're going to get because that is almost identical. But if you just want to double check yourself, you can figure out what is 7 times 9. If you just want to double check, again, we're just going to add 7 to that previous answer. So I take 56, I'm going to add 7 to it. So 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. Okay. So 7 times 9 is 63. But what we see is that 7 times 9, that 63 is just too big. Okay. So that means that 7 went into 58 8 times. That was as close as we can get. So I'm going to put that 8 up here at the top. Okay. If you need to, you could put that little reminder X there in the corner just to remind yourself that you got to take those two numbers and multiply them. Okay. So 7 went to 58 8 times. 8 times 7 is 56. We got that here. We figured that out. Okay. And then remember, mathletes, at this step, we're going to subtract it. We subtract those numbers. Okay. And then we're going to say 8 minus 6 is 2. 5 minus 5 would be 0. I'm not going to write the 0. We don't have to write the 0. And then we're going to go to the next number. There's a 2 here trying to get in on the action. So I'm going to bring the 2 down. Here we go. All right. So now I'm going to figure out how many times 7 can go into 22. Now, all this work that we did over here on the side, we saw that 7 times 5 is 35, and that answer is too big. Okay, so 5 is too big already. Okay, so remember what we said is if those multiples are too big, let's come back up here and let's start back at our 2s because a lot of students feel a lot more comfortable multiplying by 2. Okay, now 7 times 2, that's just 7 and 7. That will be 14. And remember, 14, we're trying to get as close to 22 as we can. So let's try what 7 times 3 would be. Let's see if we can get closer. Okay. So to figure out what 7 times 3 would be, remember, we're just going to add 7 to that previous answer. So our previous answer was 14. So I'm just going to add 7. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So 7 times 3 is 21. All right. Okay. Now that is as close as you're going to get. It's only one number off. Okay. So here I would say is 7 times 20, or 7 goes into 22 3 times. I'm going to put that 3 right up here. And then remember, we take that answer 3 times 7, and that would be 21. Go ahead and subtract at this step. Remember, we subtract. I'm going to say 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay. 2 minus 2 is 0. I'm not going to write it. So then we're going to go to the next digit, the 6. And the 6 is the last digit. That means this is the last step of the problem. So I'm going to bring that 6 down. Okay. There we go. And we got it there. So now we're trying to figure out how many times 7 can go into 16. And remember, guys, this is, again, why it's so important. As we write these times tables out on the side, it helps you at different parts of the problem as well. I know that 7 can go into 16. As close as we can get is right here. 7 times 3 is 21. That answer is too big. We're only trying to get to 16. So 14 right here. That is as close as we're going to get. So 7 goes into 16 twice. Okay. And so I'm going to put that 2 right up here. And then remember, 2 times 7 is 14. Okay. Last step is we subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. Don't have to write it. And I look, remember, there's no other numbers to bring down. So that means that is it. That is it. So we say, what do we do with this 2 here? What is that? That is what we call, remember, a remainder. So right here at the top, I'm going to put an R. You can put a little R here. So I'm going to write a big R. And we're just going to put a remainder of 2. Okay. And that ends up being your final answer. And remember, if somebody says, well, what does that remainder mean? What that means is 7 does not go into 5,826 evenly. It doesn't go in perfectly. There's nothing that you can multiply 7 by that'll get you the perfect answer, 5,826. Okay? So what it means is that 7 goes into 5,826 832 times with 2 left over. Okay? So it's just a remainder of 2. All right? And so that's that. All righty. Mathlete's almost there. We got 4 questions we're going to do. This is question number 3, so we're already getting there. But as you can see, our numbers are getting bigger. Now we're going to say 13,912 divided by 4. Again, that can look really intimidating because 13,912, the number is just absolutely ginormous. But remember, we're just going to take one step at a time, so we don't have to be intimidated. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to see, can 4 go into 1? And of course, the answer is no. 1's too small. 4 can't go into 1 because 1's too small, can't fit. So I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to bring that 3 along. So we're going to see, can 4 go into 13? Of course, it can, because 13 is bigger than 4. A number can always go into a bigger number, not necessarily evenly, but it can at least go into it. Okay? Now, 13 is not a huge number. 13 is not a huge number. Okay? So what we're going to do is, instead of saying 4 times 5, we've been starting with our multiplication tables at 5. But what we'll see is when we do 4 times 5, okay, it's actually going to be too big. So if we said 5, 10, 15, 20, we would see that 4 times 5 is 20. And remember, we're only going into 13. Okay? So that was too big. So what we're going to do is then we said if our 5 was ever too big, let's start with our 2. Okay? And we'll go from there. All right, so 4 times 2, that's 4 and 4 would be 8. But I think we can get closer. I think we get closer to that 13. Okay, so we're going to go to try 4 times 3. Okay, remember, we're going by 4s here. So that means all we would do is we would add 4 to the previous answer. All right, so 4 times 2 is 8. So that means we're just going to add 4 to that to get the answer for 4 times 3. So we take the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so 4 times 3 is 12. All right. Now that is really close. That is really close. Okay. But just to double check ourselves, we'll say 4 times 4. Okay. And when we do that, remember, we're just adding 4 to our previous answer. Our previous answer was 12. So we go 13, 14, 15, 16. So 4 times 4 is 16. And that, you see how that's too big, mathletes? That's too big. Can't get into that. So we're going to say that 4 times 3 is 12. That is as close to that 13 as we're going to get. So I'm going to say that 4 goes into 13 3 times. So I'm going to put that up there. And then we remember this step after we put the answer up here, we got to multiply those two numbers. So 3 times 4 is 12. Okay. At this step, we always subtract. All right. So I'm going to say 3 minus 2 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. I'm not going to write that down. Don't have to do anything with that. So I'm going to go to my next digit. This 9 here is ready to get in on the action. So I'm going to bring the 9 down. All right. So we're going to say, how many times can 4 go into 19? And remember, guys, this is why we said it's important as we work these numbers out, these times tables out on the side. If you have it worked out there, it can help you later in the problem. And that's what happens here. We're trying to figure out how many times 4 can go into 19. I know here 4 times 4 is 16. And I know that 4 times 5 is 20, which would be too big. So then we know that, okay, we already know the answer. 4 goes into 19 4 times. So I'm going to put that right up there. And then we would say 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, we subtract at this step. 9 minus 6 is 3. I go to my next digit, that 1 there. The 1 says, put me in, coach. I'm ready. All right, so I'm going to bring the 1 down. Okay, so now here we go. We're going to try to figure out how many times 4 can go into 31. Now, we did 4 times 5 is 20, but we're going to see how close we can get. So we're going to try 4 times 6, see if we can get closer. Okay, 4 times 6, remember, we're just adding 4s. So we add 4 to that previous answer. The previous answer was 20. So 20 plus 4 would be 24. Okay, I think we can get closer. Let's try it. 4 times 7, just adding 4 to that previous answer. Previous answer was 24. So 24 plus 4 would be 28. Okay, and we're just going to double check ourselves just to make sure we can't get any closer. So we're going to say 4 times 8. All right, so the previous answer was 28. We're just adding 4 to it. So 29, 30, 31, 32. Oh, and that's what we see, guys. We see that 4 times 8 is 32. That would be too big. Okay, so the closest we can get was 28, which that means that 4 goes into 31 7 times. I'm going to put that up here, 7. And then we say 7 times 4 is 28. And then this step, we always subtract. All right. So now we run into this. I want to say 1 minus 8, but it's like, what in the name of cheese? That 1's too small. I can't have a 1 and take 8 away. It's not big enough. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to come next door. We're going to borrow. So that 3, I'm going to make it a 2. And the 1 that I took away, I'm going to put right there. I turned that 1 into an 11 because I borrowed it from that 2. And so now it's big enough to subtract here. So 11 minus 8 is 3. Okay. 2 minus 2 is 0. And so that's it. So we're going to go down to our next digit, which is a 2. Now, mathletes, if you ever have questions as far as regrouping with subtraction, don't worry. We'll have another video that will show how to subtract and regroup. So don't worry. We'll have videos that will help out with that skill as well. So if you're not feeling comfortable with subtraction and regrouping, don't worry. We'll have that there to help you as well. All right. But I'm going to go ahead and bring down this 2. Okay. So now I'm figuring out how many times 4 could go into 32. And again, mathletes, because we worked out our problems, we didn't erase it. We kept it there. We know right away that 4 can go into 32 8 times. We have it all ready to go there. So there it is. 4 goes into 32 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. We subtract, gives us 0. 32 minus 32 is 0. There's nothing else to bring down. That means we are done. So that means that 13,912 divided by 4, the answer was 3,478. And so there it is. And there's nothing else to do. There's no remainder. It actually went into it perfectly even. All right. So mathletes, you've done it. We are going to our last problem here. Last problem. Now, this is a doozy. This is a doozy. This is the last problem. It is a doozy. We have 284,863 divided by 9. Okay. And again, that number there, when those teachers give you these problems, they give you these crazy numbers just to intimidate you. But we're not going to be intimidated. Remember, we're just going to take one little bit at a time, one piece at a time. And before we know it, we have it down. Okay. So we're going to see how many times can 9 go into 2. We always check that first digit. That 2's too small. We said, okay, not big enough. So then we're going to go to the next number. We're going to bring that 8 there. So we're 28. Now 28 is bigger than 9. So that means we know that 9 can go into 28. May not go into it evenly, but let's figure it out. All right. So 28 is a pretty decent number. Remember, we said if we don't feel comfortable with our times tables, we're going to come to the side and we're going to write them out. Now, remember, if you know this right away, you can just skip all of this. When we do our times tables there on the side, that's just there to help our kiddos that maybe don't feel confident in their multiplication skills. But if you can look right there and you know that 9 goes into 28 this many times, you can go ahead and just keep going. So all that I'm doing here with our times tables on the side, that's just to help our kiddos that maybe don't feel confident in their multiplication skills. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start, remember we said our 5s. 5s are some of our nicer times tables to learn. So we're going to start with a 5. So we go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Okay, I stop at the 9 because we went to it 9 times. So 9 times 5 is 45. Okay, see how that's way too big? Because we're just trying to see 9 into 28. So we remember what we said, guys. If 5 was ever too big, let's try our 2s. 2 is another sets of times tables that we feel a little bit more confident in. So 9 times 2 is 9 and 9. That would be 18. Okay, but we're trying to get to 28. I think we can get closer. So let's try 9 times 3. Okay, now right here, we're doing our 9s. So remember, with multiplication, all we're going to do is we're going to add the 9 then to our previous answer. So our previous answer was 18. So 9 times 3 is we're going to add 9 to it. So 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So 9 times 3 is 27. Now that is really close. That is really close. But if you just want to double check, just to make sure, if you wanted to do 9 times 4, all we're going to do is add 9 to that previous answer. So 27 was our previous answer, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Okay? And if you were thinking that 9 times 4 is probably going to be too big, you are correct. Okay? So that means that 9 was able to go into that 28 3 times. It went into it 3 times. Okay? So I'm going to put that right up here. And then remember, that means at this step, we multiply those two numbers. 9 went to 28 3 times. 3 times 9 is 27. Okay. And remember this step, we subtract. 8 minus 7 is 1. 2 minus 2 is 0. I'm not going to write that down. I'm going to go to my next number. The 4 is getting in the action. Okay. So we're going to figure out how many times 9 can go into 14. Now here's the crazy thing, mathletes, check this out. When we look at our previous work, 9 times 2 is 18. That's already too big. So that means that 9 can actually only go into 14 just one time. Just one time, because 9 times 2 is 18. That was already too big. So that means that 9 was able to go into 14 only one time. Okay? And then 1 times 9 is 9. Okay? We're going to go ahead and subtract. Okay? Now, in this case, you can't say 4 minus 9. You could regroup, but when you do regroup, it's just going to get you in the same boat. If you regrouped, that 1 would become a 0, and that 4 would become a 14, but now we're in the same boat. Okay? So if you don't quite know what 14 minus 9 is, you could actually count up. You could say 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That means there was a difference of 5. So we could just say 14 minus 9 is 5. Okay? And then we're going to go to our next number. We have our next number was an 8. So the 8's going to come down, get in on the action. Okay? All right. So now we're trying to figure out how many times 9 can go into 58. Now I'm coming over here looking at everything we worked out. Now we worked out pretty good. We got 9 times 5 is 45. That's pretty close. Let's see if we can get closer. So we're going to go to 9 times 6. Now remember, mathletes, we talked about not getting rid of, or not erasing any times tables that we worked out in any previous problem. Don't get rid of it, okay? And when we look back at a problem earlier, I'm going to bring this in. When we looked, we already worked out 9 times 6 or 6 times 9. It was 54. It was 54. So we actually already know that answer. And because we didn't get rid of it, we kept it there. We were able to say, okay, we already know 9 times 6 or 6 times 9 is 54. And it just saves you. It saves you from having to work anything out. Okay? Now that's really close. That is really close. But we want to double check ourselves. We can do 9 times 7. And again, mathletes, because we've already been working a lot of these problems out, when I look at our one of our previous problems, when we were doing ones with our 7s, we did a 7 times 9 or 9 times 7. The answer was 63. So that means 9 times 7 is 63. So the more problems we work out, a lot of it, we worked out all the math for ourselves. And so we look here, 9 going into 58. It can't go into 7 times because that would just be too big. Okay, because the answer is 63. That's too big. So that means the closest we can get to 58 would be that 9 times 6. Okay, so I'm going to put the 6 up here. And then 9 times 6 is 54. Write that there. We subtract. 8 minus 4 is 4. And of course, 5 minus 5 is 0. Don't have to do anything there. So I'm going to bring this 6 down. That's the next number to get in the mix. Okay, so we're going to figure out how many times 9 can go into 46. And look, we got all of this already worked out. We're going to go back to all of our times tables here and see how close we can get. And what we look is the closest we can get to 46, without going over is 45. Okay, so that means that 9 went into 46 5 times. Okay, so I'm going to say 5 times 9, that was 45. This step we subtract. 6 minus 5 is 1. 4 minus 4 is 0. Not going to worry about that. And we're going to go to the, look, guys, last number, last digits, the last one to bring down. That means this is going to be the last step. So we're going to figure out how many times 9 can go into 13. Now, 13 is not a very big number, so we're going to probably look up here to see. Okay, we know 9 times 1 is 9, but 9 times 2 is 18. Now, 18 is too big because we're only trying to get to 13. So that means it could only go into it just one time. So 9 goes into 13 one time, and then 1 times 9 is 9. We subtract, and again, we could regroup here, but it's basically going to get you in the same boat. Okay, and then we say 13 minus 9. If we don't know that right off the top of our head, you can remember, you add to figure out the difference. You could actually say 10, 11, 12, 13, and we would say that 13 minus 9 is 4. Okay, and so there's nothing else to bring down. That means that this 4 is what we call, remember, a remainder. That just lets you know that 9 was not able to go into 284,863 evenly. Okay, it went to this big number. Now, because this number is so big, what we're going to do is we're going to start in the back. We're going to put a comma in there. Makes it look a little easier to read, a little easier to say. So I'm going to start to the back. That 1 was the first digit. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put a comma there. Okay, and so what? And then there's your answer. 31,651 with a remainder of 3. All right. All right, mathletes. So today's episode, we worked on long division. I know that long division can be like not the funnest thing in the world, but just remember, if all it is we're just working on that multiplication, trying to figure out how many times a number can go into another, then remember, if you don't feel confident with your multiplication skills, just work them out on the side. And remember, when you work them out on the side, never erase it. Always keep it there. because sometimes that work that you work out on the side can help you later on in the problem, or even maybe even in some future problems. So if you can, just subscribe and hit that notification bell if you need some future episodes, but also in the comment section, if you could just leave maybe some skills that maybe that you need help with. So if there's something like, hey, Coach John, can you help me out with equations, with multiplication, with addition, with place value, even some of the things we're going to work on, logarithms, whatever skill that you need help with, just put it in the comment section and I'll try to make some future episodes just to make sure you're squared away. So appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.